just don't hold anything in. Let it all out. All right? Like, let's hear it.
What is up, everybody? Joe here with Jason and Kramzer, as always, and we're doing something real special this week. It is ABBA week here on Listography. I'm excited. I know Kramzer's moderately excited. Jason, on the other hand, we'll get to his opinions on ABBA in a moment. I think we all know ABBA, Dancing Queen, the two movies, the Mamma Mia movies that came out, kind of a worldwide phenomenon for a band that's, around 8 studio albums from 1973 to 1981, sold anywhere between 150 and 380 million albums worldwide. They were huge, the biggest band from a non-English primary speaking country pretty much ever. They were really the first to kind of break out. So they kind of set the stage there. All their albums, of course, in English, but they're an interesting group, interesting story. They were married. They broke up right at the end of their tenure in the band. No offense to Alfred Nobel, but obviously the greatest Swedish import of all time. Maybe Saab, maybe Greta Thunberg. No, it's ABBA. It's clearly ABBA. I love them. I can't wait to get started on this. So, before we start, what is your level of familiarity with ABBA before we started listening for Listography?
I know and like pretty much all the hits. Seen Mamma Mia, Meryl Streep rules. I used to know someone that liked ABBA a lot, but I don't really remember picking it up a lot. So I think really just the greatest hits, all I know. Yeah, this is the first time going around that I've listened to any of their original studio works. It was quite an experience. My main takeaway with ABBA is that, I'm just shocked that you, Joe, like them as much as you do. They showed up in one of your Album of the Year candidates, and you said they could maybe be a top 25 all-time artist for you, which took me by surprise. It is what it is, but yeah, that's my familiarity.
I also only know the hits. I've never seen the Mamma Mia movies. I can't say I like any of the hits, but I've always felt like I needed to give ABBA a chance because on paper, I like that kind of music. Anything really poppy, especially from the 70s. Doesn't matter how sort of sappy or cheesy or saccharine it is. I love all those early kind of pop hits, the Partridge Family, the Carpenters, anything like that. So it's kind of weird that I didn't like the hits. And I felt like with your stamp of approval and other high profile people giving them a stamp of approval, Dave Grohl, I know, is a big ABBA fan. So I figured I needed to check it out, and I guess I'll let you know shortly how it went.
Spoiler, it didn't go well for Jason, but we'll let him explain a little bit more. I'm fine with Jason not liking him. I will be more than enough to overcome his negativity throughout this proceeding.
No need to worry about negativity. This group is the most positive, smiling, bouncy friggin' group I've ever listened to in my life. There's just sun shining all over the place.
And I have to say, I'm probably more familiar with ABBA's discography than almost everybody else. It's shorter. It's only 8 studio albums, so it's kind of like Zeppelin, where they just kind of had their period of greatness. There was no before and after. They broke up kind of just in time. They're not my favorite band of all time, but I really appreciate the brevity of their discography. And really, their albums are like 30 minutes long, so it's not like deep listening. But I think there's a lot to their music, which we will discuss. Who wants to start us off with your number 8?
I'm interested to see what Jason is doing, but my number 8 is Ring Ring. The debut, I'd say this is an album I did not like very much at all. It really establishes that ABBA sound, especially with the vocals. But there's nothing interesting musically really going on here for me at all. I don't think the songwriting is there yet. It really just seems like a rookie record. Nina Pretty Ballerina is probably the only one I kind of liked a little bit. But the whole album really operates in one window, one registry. And I'm not crazy about the way they do the vocals on top of each other, which is kind of the main sound of ABBA. So by the end of this, it was really monotonous, really drilled a hole into my head and was a bit annoying. So I didn't care for Ring Ring very much. It is my number 8.
All right. My number 8 is Arrival.
Oh my God. Wow. What a... Joe, do we need to send an EMT over there?
This is the one, I think this is the only one that made any of your lists, right, Joe? Album of the year?
Actually, this made it in 76, but also The Visitors in 81.
Oh, okay. So heading into this is their 4th album. I was feeling like, all right, I know this album is thought kind of highly of, and Joe had it on his list. So this must be the album where everything clicks for them. And I thought it was significantly worse than the first 3. It's way too slick. I mean, opening with When I Kissed the Teacher is one of the worst opening tracks. It's such a weird way to open a record. And for all the talk about how meticulously crafted the production is, I just thought the production was just bland 70s schmaltz. All of the melodies are really kind of like annoying and really grate on me. I mean, they definitely know how to write a hook and they will get stuck in your head, but it's not the kind of melody that's really welcomed in my head, just the really annoying kind. The best thing I can say about this record is the bass playing by Rutger Gunnarsson, I guess is his name, is pretty good. The closing track, Happy Hawaii, is also a really bad closer. It's a really awful way to bookend the record. Probably their 2 worst songs, open and close this record. Everything in between is just, there's some hits on there, Dancing Queen's on this one, I believe. And if you like Dancing Queen, give it a shot. But if you're not a fan of that song, I don't see you enjoying much else on this record.
I do have to point out, Jason, that Happy Hawaii is a bonus track. So the album actually ends with Arrival, which is the 10th track. And then Fernando and Happy Hawaii are just bonus tracks added on later. So it doesn't end with the worst song. So that's an extra point in its favor.
I will back up, Jason, that the tropical stuff that they do throughout never sounds good to me. So
well, I can't argue with that, because that's definitely kind of their reggae, a couple reggae tracks. Just get those the heck out of here. But fortunately, they pretty much only appear on the first. I think they just appear on Waterloo, and then Happy Hawaii is the bonus track, so we don't count that. My number 8, like Kramzer, Ring Ring. Wasn't even an ABBA album originally. It was Björn, Benny, Agnetha, Frida, and then they kind of just made it an ABBA album after they blew up. And it's very low key. It doesn't have that kind of like buoyant charm that the later albums have. Sort of like Mama Papa's meets Three Dog Night-ish sometimes. Something like People Need Love. It's okay. It's very like Swedish, trying to be like Summer of Love, 60s, 70s American music, and it just doesn't quite work. I do like Disillusion a lot. It was written, it's the only track written chiefly by Agnetha Fältskog, and it's sort of this, like it has like these Beatles kind of guitars in it. It's very kind of pretty, and I kind of wonder, like that's literally the only track with her writing credits on the whole discography, so would have been interesting to see them go in that kind of direction, because they were kind of dabbling in a whole bunch of stuff and didn't really have a sound yet. Other than that, Nina Pretty Ballerina's okay, and the rest are just sort of campy, not quite catchy enough tunes. It's not a great debut. Even I will admit that in my ABBA love. In general, almost everyone on earth considers this their weakest album. It's going to be really, I just really am interested to see what Jason's list is. I don't even care about anything else at this point. If Arrival's in 8, I just really want to know what the rest is going to be. What's going to be number 1? No clue.
Probably going to be friggin' Ring Ring or some, I don't know. What the first few songs I heard on Voulez-Vous, I was like, okay, maybe this could be Jason's cup of tea. And then the rest of the album, I was like, I don't know. I have no idea where it's going to go with him. All right, my number 7, Waterloo, kind of for all the same reasons as Ring Ring. Just a handful of songs I like more, although there might be some songs I really dislike more than stuff on Ring Ring, like King Kong's song and Hasa Manana. But I really like Susie Hang Around. I like Waterloo. kind of like Honey Honey, but compared to the stuff they'll do in a few years, and it is like Joe was saying, they put out a lot of albums in a really tight window, basically one a year. So the way they evolved is pretty impressive in that short time. But this one, it's just too sweet and flowery and pretty. It's like they're scoring a Disney movie that hasn't been made. It's just too much drama. And again, they're not really creative outside of a few of their tricks. They'll get more tricks later, but right now, it's just a little bit better than Ring Ring. Still didn't really like it very much, and there will be albums that I like, but this one I could never hear again. It's just like Joe was saying, they're like trying to do a new sound but an old style of just like the 60s, and we're a big, they're not hippies or anything, but they're kind of trying to do this really flowery, God and the earth is good, just kind of smile, sunshine and rainbows and fluffiness, and it's just too much for me. I don't care when the stuff is really polished, but this is just too friggin' sweet. It's almost just dumbfounds you, like it's made for children that with self-esteem issues or something. I don't know. It's not my cup of tea. So Waterloo, number 7.
My number 7 is the self-titled album ABBA. Not to be confused with ABBA, the album. This is our 3rd record. This is where sort of the early 70s sound starts to fade. It starts to get a little slicker, a little bit more funk, a little bit more R&B coming into the sound. They've got these, like every once in a while on their records, they'll have a track that's like the rock track. And those are usually pretty awful. On this record, you've got Rock Me, which is pretty bad. I guess the highlights here would be the sort of B section of the chorus to SOS, and the horns on I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do. But I don't think there's really a full song on this album that I like. Man, their melodies, I love catchy melodies, but all of their melodies, for whatever reason, just drive me nuts.
It's inexplicable to hear you, of all people, to say that, Jason, but that's all right. Sometimes it just doesn't click. I don't know why. Nobody's going to know why. We'll get some psychologist to examine you later. Like Kramser, I have Waterloo at my number 7. Other than the song Waterloo, which rules, such a ridiculous metaphor that they would use there, Waterloo and Napoleon. So, like, only a group that didn't speak English as like a first language could use that as like this big metaphor for, love and stuff like that. It's preposterous, but I love it. And the song is great. I can see why it won Eurovision back when it did and kind of launched their whole fortunes. Other than that, kind of with Kramser, Sitting in the Palm Trees, pretty weak. One of their weakest songs. King Kong song is like a weird, like Beach Boys sort of ripoff, but like they didn't get the point of like the surfing. It's like King Kong sort of like grafted onto a Beach Boys song. It just doesn't, like, there's something missing, I think, in these early albums where it's just not quite clicking. And like Kramser was saying, this album is so sweet. It's like, it's saccharine. It's just like too sweet. It's something, it's like pure sugar. There's just not enough sort of other elements other than that, except for on Waterloo. Waterloo, they get it right, but everything else doesn't quite work. My Mama Said has this kind of weird, like Steely Dan jazz guitar solo, which I liked, but it doesn't really fit with the song at all. Yeah, it's pretty easily my number 7. It's not one that I really go back and listen to much at all. I pretty much start with ABBA self-titled when I want my ABBA fix and go from there. So they're getting there. There's promise shown by ABBA, but not quite there. On Waterloo, my number 7.
Yeah, really baby steps between the first 2 albums. I'm sticking chronologically right now with me. Number 6, I've got ABBA, although I'm not ready to say it'd be something that I would go back to. I still didn't like it very much, but it is considerably different than the first 2. They're starting to really just kind of compartmentalize and construct their songs in a bigger, sweeping manner, and they're doing, they've got just a little bit mature technique where a lot of the songs, just from verse to pre-chorus to chorus, are nice, different scenery from one another. They don't kind of just run into one another like they probably do in the first 2 albums. And that technique is also done throughout the albums. There's much more variety song to song. It doesn't sound like one big same registry of all the same tempo, all of the same timing and everything else. This one's got some variety. Never liked the song Mamma Mia, though, and Tropical Loveland is a big no for me. Didn't like that at all. SOS had a lot of interesting stuff on it. I'm with Jason on this album. The wannabe rockers are just that wannabe, really pathetic, actually. But I think they start to do more rockin' stuff later on, and it works because they're doing it their way. But this way, right now, they're just trying to capitalize on rock as a genre and put out a couple of songs like it, and it doesn't really work. Intermezzo, number one, kind of cool, I guess. You know, they're really letting the musicianship with what they can get done in the studio kind of influence themselves a lot more, and that's going to take off in a big way soon, but they're still not there. Still a pass for me on this album, but we're getting there. ABBA, self-titled, number 6 for me.
Right, my number 6 is Super Trooper. This one lacks kind of the really cool funk grooves that elevated the better moments of Voulez-Vous. Pretty much everything on this album is either like a really slow, sappy ballad, or it's just annoyingly chipper and upbeat. And I could say this about any of their albums, but I guess I'll talk about it here because it's as good as a place as any. One thing that I think that is not working for me with ABBA in general is the female vocals. They're pleasant enough and they sound good, but I don't really get any emotion from them ever. And it's kind of creepy because they're always so happy that it almost feels kind of like cultish or something, like something weird's happening. I don't know. It doesn't connect with me on any emotional level at all. That said, the chorus to me and I on this record is pretty great. Probably my favorite moment on any of the records that I've talked about so far.
Interesting. I don't get what you're saying with the female vocals. I think that's the best part of ABBA, is the way that the female vocals are so sort of undermining the happiness and poppiness of the music in so many cases. Sort of the sadness, the melancholy of the singing is often, and the lyrics kind of go against the grain of the super upbeat, peppy. You need to listen to SOS on repeat for 24 hours. You'll understand. For me, we're getting to the point where I love all these albums. These 6 are pretty much, the 6, 5, 4, 3 are all very close. Kind of just whatever I feel like that day. My number 6 is going to be ABBA, the album. I like it a lot. Eagle, I don't know if that's a great opener, though. It's a little sort of melodramatic for me. A little too much, a little too long. They should have just done a cold open with Take a Chance on Me, just with the vocals. I think it would have been an awesome way to start an album, just out of the blue. Album has a really theatrical sound, probably their most theatrical sounding. Something like Thank You for the Music and I Wonder. It sounds like they were written for a stage show. And I know 4 of them were kind of written for a mini musical. Thank You for the Music, I Wonder, and I'm a Marionette. So that's, I guess, where the theatricalness comes from. I really like Hole in the Soul, a little more rocking, some electric guitar, fun song. And The Name of the Game is one of my favorites of their sort of, in the beginning, they were very sort of immature sounding a lot of the ways, but their later albums, like it feels like adults having adult relationships and adult problems. Name of the Game in particular is a good example of this. There's a lot of drama in the lyrics and the singing, and you can really feel like people breaking up and having real relationships. It doesn't feel, kiddie or teenage love at all to me. It's very like 30-year-old, 40-year-old, like adults having these kind of conversations. So I always like that about ABBA. Always kind of appealed to me. The singing on this is fantastic. I love sort of the close singing, the harmonies, just it all kind of works for me. I don't know why like Jason and I have this huge divide over the singing in general, because it's so attractive to me, just the way it all sort of weaves in together, just the little flourishes, the little synths, just everything about it works for me. So I like this album a lot. It's my number 6, but I still think it's pretty darn great.
Before I get to my number 5, let me address what you guys are talking about with the sound, because I am 100% on board with Jason on this. There is something odd about the way the vocals come across because it's so sweet, but it's almost like it's like the 70s version of auto-tuned where everything is just like this. I get no human connection with the vocals at all. It seems like they are just like dead inside, like under, like Jason said, just like in a cult. They drink the juice and they're like, all right, go be happy Americans. This is what it sounds like, and that's what comes across. There's something really eerie about it. So I'm with Jason on that 100%. And I'm not getting a lot of maturity in the songwriting and the relationships they're discussing. Maybe it's they are older and talking about it, but it's still got like that just drama queen feel where everything is over exaggerated, everything is sensationalized, and just, you know, making a mountain out of a molehill. But that's kind of just the vibe I get from the 70s and the disco era in general. Like, we can't afford it, but we've got this fur coat and we went downtown to Manhattan and partied, and oh my God, this happened, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to listen to ABBA, whatever. All right. Number 5, I'm going with The Visitors. A lot of stuff I liked about this. I like this considerably more than the bottom spots. I feel like the bass has kind of been the highlight going into this. And now it's still, to me, kind of like a new highlight, and it's kind of like this disco new wave blend, but it's not as flourishing. It's a little more downhill and just kind of pulsating throughout the album. Head Over Heels is good. I feel like they really want to go super radio pop and kind of blend in with a lot of stuff that's going on around them, but they don't really conform to that entirely, which I applaud them for. They still very much it's an ABBA record. But I also get the sense that they don't really know 100% what they wanted to do with this album. There are a bunch of really good songs on it that I liked a good bit. Head Over Heels, like that. I like Slipping Through. I like side 2 pretty much more than the front. And I think this sound they were doing in the late 70s, especially once they started getting more synth involved, I think they don't get credit for being a little bit ahead of their time. Like, you can pick up stuff that they were doing that like Madonna or the Eurythmics would do 5-6 years later. They were kind of like doing this a little bit first. So I didn't dislike this album that much at all. In fact, I thought it was decent, which is kind of my big takeaway from this. Is I anticipated them being a group that I only really liked the hits that I knew, but you know, there's definitely one album that I would reach for again, and then a bunch of other songs that I definitely wouldn't mind hearing again. And that includes stuff from The Visitors, my number 5.
My number 5 is Voulez-Vous. Opens up with a really promising, nasty funk groove that I think would make Nile Rodgers proud on As Good As New. And Cram basically guessed my reaction to this album. It starts out great and then pretty quickly reverts back to their old ways of just kind of schmaltzy ballads. This ends up being kind of their glitziest sounding record. It sounds a lot the way like the cover looks, Bright Lights. It's not entirely really a disco record, but it has that kind of vibe to it going through. Not a lot of songs on here that I really like, even As Good As New with the awesome groove on it. I don't think the chorus is that memorable or catchy on that one. So track for track on here, not a lot that I would ever hope to hear again.
Well, me and Jason finally have something in common because I also have Voulez-Vous at number 5, although I think his is like down here and mine's like way up here as far as our like for this record. And yes, this is the disco album of ABBA's. It's not entirely disco, but I think there's a nice disco rhythm beat underpinning pretty much the whole album. For the most part, Chiquitita, maybe not so much, but they kind of have the like extended kind of instrumental stuff on Voulez-Vous at the end, for the extra dancing and whatnot. But I really like their disco sound. I like the up tempo. This one, it's fun. It's good catchy songwriting, good catchy beats. I really like Angel Eyes a lot. I like As Good As New. I think it has a great funk beat, and I think the chorus is catchy as heck. Does Your Mother Know that's another one that's like only a Swedish or like European band could write something like that, because it's like almost inappropriate, but it works because they're happy Swedish people and it's Europe and there are no rules. And it has the guy singing lead for once, which is sort of an interesting change up. The girls are singing backup, Agnetha and Frida. Two of their best songs aren't on the album, Summer Night City and Gimme, Gimme, Gimme and Man After Midnight. So the album's a little slight compared to some of the others. Chiquitita is a nice sort of, it starts out slow with the acoustic and the sort of layers each time it goes through more. You get the guitar coming in and the drums and the backup vocals, and I really like the way it builds. It's just super catchy. If this music isn't at least like catchy in your head and makes you want to tap your feet, I just don't know what's missing. I think it's a great album. It's maybe just there's a couple kind of throwaway tracks like Kisses of Fire and Lovers Live a Little Longer. So not my favorite, but I think it's a pretty solid disco album.
My number 4 is Super Trooper. Kind of get like big ballad vibes from this. Winner Takes All. Again, stuff that's like maybe a bit ahead of their time with the 80s monster ballads. Like there's some framework here, even for some big hair metal bands to like pull up some of these songs the way they're done. But a lot of it is just way too much of that. A lot of it just sounds like big holiday feel-goodery, just fluff pieces that you would hear in malls, and just too much. Get the sense this is kind of like more of their big pop record, which I think after this they also kind of did. They're really trying to tap in again with like the Visitors stuff around them. It doesn't have their best songwriting is kind of the main thing. And it's got some bad songwriting on it. Happy New Year, I think it's terrible. Our Last Summer is decent. Winner Take All, pretty cool. Lay All Your Love on Me. But like Me and I and The Piper don't really do it for me. Probably my favorite sounding album though. I think by now kind of that the style and the weird, blindly smilingness of the Ring Ring and Waterloo era is like completely gone, and now they know like their target audience and they're really playing it up. To me is kind of how I feel from this album. Seems like their most commercial, maybe the album the record company really wanted them to make, but I thought it was pretty good. Sounds good, not as bad as the other stuff, and I thought it was pretty decent. So number 4 for me is Super Trooper.
All right, my number 4 is Ring Ring. And this actually wasn't released in the US, I read, until 1995. I thought it was pretty decent. I like this production style more than what they would go on to do. A little bit drier, not as much of a sheen on it. I mean, the songwriting isn't great, but I can kind of hear some of what you're talking about there's being like, I don't know if it's a language disconnect or what's happening, but I don't know. I don't know that much about ABBA. Maybe they're completely fluent, and maybe they were completely fluent, but whatever that disconnect is, that's creating a really bizarre weirdness on these early records that I like. I think it works. And I think some of the songs on this are pretty good too. I Saw It in the Mirror is pretty cool, which is sung by the guys with a little bit of backing vocals from the two females. Love Isn't Easy, but It Sure Is Hard Enough is pretty cool. Really weird song title, but I thought that was good. Santa Rosa's not bad. There's still occasions where it gets a little nauseating, like People Need Love. It's just overly happy-go-lucky, but yeah, this one wasn't bad. This may be the turning point on my list. Not so terrible.
Interesting. This blows my mind. Blowing my mind over here every selection. For me, I got ABBA, not the album, ABBA self-titled is my number 4. I think this is where they really start to just nail it with SOS, Mamma Mia, So Long, I Do. Just sort of transforming, sort of, finding their sound. It's still kind of a little all over the place, like Tropical Loveland is not good at all. Man in the Middle is kind of weird, another kind of male-driven vocal on that one. Something like Hey Hey Helen, Bang and Boomerang they feel like filler, but I think when they do have a good song like SOS, which has somehow Jason doesn't feel the sadness in Fältskog's lead vocal, which she does last at the lead, so. But she's the one with kind of like the teary, almost on the verge of breaking down style. It's not quite as polished as Frida Lindstad's. And I just love the way she carries the tune until the big chorus comes in. kind of brightens it up from minor to major. I just think it's a really well written song. I really like Mamma Mia. I think it's great, incredibly catchy. I like the Schlager, like horns of I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do. For me, I usually skip Hey Hey Helen, Tropical Love Land, and those tracks. So it's not quite as consistent as their best albums, but I think some of their songs on here are some of their best work. It's just not quite there. They'll get their next album, their arrival, if you will.
I feel bad putting you on the defense so much because obviously I enjoyed this more than Jason did. But I don't think for 1 microsecond did I get any sadness from any sort of moment from this ABBA discography. Not even like a little bit. I have
I'm gonna have to send you some pieces, some writings on the subject because I'm feeling it all over the place. It's the great thing about ABBA to me is that juxtaposition, the duality of the music and the vocals. But that's me. That's what I'm hearing.
Did you write those pieces?
Me personally, I wish. No, this is kind of, maybe I'll do a little more research next time, guys. Come on.
No, I know what you're saying, but I don't think it just doesn't work for me. I'm not Sharon Stone's character in Casino. I'm not, it just doesn't, this isn't my idea of sadness and drama. So just be happy that I liked a good bit of this. Okay. I mean,
I'm just saying, you, like most Americans, probably feel the same way. They weren't as big over here. I think people sort of wrote them off as too shiny bubblegum pop, but I think you really gotta sort of, I don't know, maybe it just doesn't click for everyone. But the people it does click for, I don't know. I get a lot of sort of the sadness and the contemplativeness, melancholy, especially on the later albums. I can see not so much on their early stuff, but I think SOS is sort of the start of that sort of trend that they would work on a lot more on Super Trooper and The Visitors.
Well, maybe, just maybe, I'll give some stuff another bit of a go after this, but right now I'm a bit ABBA'd out, but still glad I did it. Number 3 for me is Voulez-Vous. Thought this was pretty decent. I'm going 2.5 out of 5, which means I would listen to it again because the bass is a rockin'. It's disco-y, it's glammy, glitzy, probably their sexiest album, a little seedy. It's got like that Studio 54 kind of feel to me. I do think the best stuff for the first 2 songs and Angel Eyes also. Bummer Summer Night City's not an official track because that song is awesome, but yeah, Kisses of Fire and Lovers at the end, not terrible. Does Your Mother Know is kind of weird to me. It's a bit awkward. But I thought this one was the most fun of the albums, just to, from like feel the pulse in your body. Dug it, thought it was good. I'd listen to it again, and probably has the least amount of that all on ABBA vocals with the sweeping melodies and choruses. It's a lot more kind of staggered and flavorful. So I like it. It was a little spicy and I dug it. Voulez-Vous, number 3 for me.
My number 3 is Waterloo. I love the title track. I think this record still has that early 70s sound that Ring Ring has that I like more than the more polished stuff later on. I really like King Kong's song. It's so bizarre. I'll take that weirdness over the sort of just annoying pop hooks anytime. They've got another one of their rock songs on this record, Watch Out, which is pretty embarrassingly bad. But for the most part, I think this record's decent. Susie Hangaround's awesome. Really catchy, jangle pop tune, kind of birdsy. It's really cool. So yeah, there's, I would say half of this record is at least pretty enjoyable.
We're making progress here, folks. Not probably going to be echoed by a lot of. I saw a lot of ABBA albums from our commenters when we were doing our best of years back in the 70s. So it'll be interesting to see what they have to say about it. I didn't see many Ring Rings or Waterloos, those usually the later albums. But maybe we have some, deep archivist ABBA fans who really dig that early stuff. We'll see. I got at my number 3, The Visitors. their final album, 1981. It made my top 5 that year. I think they had all divorced by this time, so sort of the happy-go-luckiness out the window. Kind of right off the bat with the Visitors, they have the little kind of weird, slightly alien vocal effect on the lead vocals for the Visitors, that icy synth that kind of they started dabbling with a lot on Super Trooper. You know, after Voulez-Vous, definitely took a turn for the melodramatic, contemplative, little darker. You know, something like Slipping Through My Fingers, which is very melancholy and sort of thinking about how your daughter or son or whatever has grown up before your eyes, and you basically missed all of it because you were a bajillion selling pop band from Sweden and you didn't have time to play with them. Which, you know, it's that sort of adultness that, I don't know, maybe it works better for me now. I don't think I would have gotten that when I was younger. But I like this album a lot. I think Head Over Heels is very catchy. I think When All Is Said and Done sort of continues that almost adult contemporary sort of style of adults breaking up, which definitely kind of fits what they were going through personally at this time. Soldiers is another kind of strong sort of, it's very European sounding still. It's got the, you know, the icy synths, the vocal melodies. It sounds a little strange, a little weirder, which I definitely like that a little bit more than their early sort of super peppy stuff. One of Us is another, has this kind of funky, cool bass line, and it's sad. It's sad lyrics. It's sad people going through breakups, but it's kind of peppy music with a danceable beat to it. And it's just a little more interesting, I think, because of what they were going through, and it definitely colors the whole songwriting. So I definitely like their later period a little bit more. But I think this is a very good kind of send-off. It doesn't sound cheesy, like the synths and stuff aren't cheesy sounding. So they kind of escaped before super 80s production kind of took over. That definitely kind of makes me like them more. They didn't have that sort of fade out into oblivion. They just, that's it, we're done. We'll go about our ways. So really like the Visitors. Since Kramzer gave a star score for his last album of 2.5, I gotta at least say, at least where I'm coming from, this would be a 4.5 for me. It's about as good as it gets for the early 80s.
Speaking of stars, you know, I don't want to seem like I hate ABBA. They're not like in the gutter for me. They're just not a band that I'm gonna reach for. You know, the lowest I'm gonna go is 2 stars for the bottom 2 albums, which I would consider lousy, and then everything else I think is decent. And then my favorite album I think is a good album. So, you know, if you said, "Hey, I got a ticket to an ABBA show," I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll go. Sure, of course, I'll go." But if you said, "I have a free ticket with a steak dinner to go see Kid Rock," I'd be like, "That's okay. I'll eat whatever the hell I got in the fridge or in the back of my car. Like, that's good. Don't worry about it." Okay, number 2, pretty good, decent album here for me is going to be ABBA, the album. Don't see a lot of consistency or connectivity in this. I think it's a little all over the place, especially because Joe was talking about, goes from Eagle, which has like these like prog rock vibes to it, into Take a Chance on Me, which is like just a good old fashioned sing along, harmonized a cappella, just like so different from track 1 to track 2. But I think the highlights on this album are mostly highlights and all songs that I think are pretty good. One Man, One Woman, Name of the Game. I really like I'm a Marionette, actually. Got some pretty cool Kate Bush vibes from that. And there is just this weird like approach, what their audience and objective is with their writing, especially on this album, and ABBA itself, the album, not the album, self-titled ABBA. So confusing. It always feels like it's so cinematic. Like these albums are for movies that don't exist. It's really unusual. So I thought this one was really cool. It's the first time they really expanded their songwriting. Well, after Arrival, I think that was a step in the right direction. Easily not their worst album. What a crazy opinion Jason's got, but it's a good album. Hole in Your Soul, pretty good. I will go with the album, number 2 for me.
That is also my number 2. I think it's a vast improvement over the 2 records that come before it. I think Eagle is really, really cool. I agree. There's some prog vibes on there. I also agree with Joe that it's a really weird opener, especially for ABBA. If it was a different band, it might be a cool opener. But to go from their previous album, Arrival, and then open with Eagle had to be a shocker for people buying that right when it came out and putting it on. Like you guys both alluded to, the name of the game is a really cool track, pretty cool synth groove. There's some really nice lead guitar work going on in the background on that tune too. Hole in Your Soul is really cool. I like that song a lot. There's some nice electric piano on it. I think the verses are really catchy. There's still some really corny songs on here though that I don't like Take a Chance on Me. I don't like One Man, One Woman. But I think in all, I think this is a far more nuanced record than most of their albums. I can kind of see maybe a little bit where you're talking about some melancholy coming in, but that's only comparatively speaking to the rest of their catalog. But yeah, I think this one's decent.
Got it decent. That's good. It's good. For my number 2, I'm going with Super Trooper. No more disco. That's completely gone. It's completely this is super Euro pop. Gone is the disco, gone is the dance beats, the boogie, the funk. This is very sort of central, wintry, Scandinavia, cold. Everything's cold on this album. It feels, icy. The synths, the guitar, it's all strange. And maybe that's why I dig it so much. It doesn't feel like a record that anyone from Britain or the United States could write or produce or make at all. Really like Super Trooper, just sort of the strangeness of the opening lines of Super Trooper sort of kind of clash with how warm and catchy the rest of it is. But it's still got that sort of like undercurrent of this isn't really what we want, performing every night. There's got to be something else. Winner Takes It All, another sort of big breakup song. Our Last Summer is sort of unique because it has a really long, for them, guitar solo in the middle of it, which I like. Lay Your Love on Me is just super layered, like wall of sound of synths, and a lot of different styles on here. Happy New Year's, peppy and poppy. I love it. I don't know what Kram's is talking about. But again, it sounds happy, but it's not. Like the lyrics itself are not it's not like, hey, everything's going to be great in the new year. Sort of like we wish it was a happy new year, but underneath there's like, it's not a happy new year. The rest of it I like a lot. Me and I, Andante, on and on and on, sort of, the self-referential about being a superstar, going up to the bar. So it's just a weird album. Just everything about it sort of catches me off guard when I first heard it, because it just didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before. And it's just completely unique in the way it kind of spans the whole different genres and everything else. So I think it's great. I love every minute of it. One of my favorite albums of the 80s. Didn't make my top 5 in 1980 because 1980 was stacked, but probably a 4.5, 5-star album for me. Listen to it all the time. Probably one of the most listened to albums of mine in the past 5 years or so.
When did your big ABBA explosion take off?
2016, I think. And I've had a couple ABBA songs on my top 100 Spotify charts every year since. I don't know why. I listened to some of their stuff in college. Like I had the greatest hits and I thought they were catchy and fun and peppy and everything, but I really never thought to listen to an entire ABBA album. And I must have read something, a review, sort of because all the critics hated them back in the day, but now even I hate to go back to Pitchfork all the time, but sort of the retrospectives from places like Pitchfork, which is probably what spurred me to re-listen to everything in the first place. Or maybe somebody on Twitter talking about it. I just picked it up one day. I was like, okay, I'll give an ABBA a shot. And I loved it. And I just, ever since then, I don't know what it is. ABBA and Elvis Costello basically run my life for the past 5-6 years.
Nice. Well, the number 1, obviously, is Arrival. Joe, it looks like we'll have it as well as number 1. So this is the second time in a listography where someone has a dead last. That's also number 1 for someone else. Oddly enough, happened with Depeche Mode. Is that correct, guys?
It also happened me and you with Pavement.
That's true. I think this one is probably the most egregious because Arrival is considered their best. But again, it's that case of if you don't like the artist, it's hard to like the best of the artist because you're getting so much of it. So it kind of makes sense. But Arrival is my number one. I will go out and say it is a good album. I would listen to it again. I would recommend it. 3 out of 5 for me, which means good. Nothing to knock at at all. Really good. So here's what I like about it. I love When I Kissed the Teacher opening it off. I think it's clever and cute and cool and coy and playful, and it hooks you in, and then it hits you with Dancing Queen. And Dancing Queen is such an awesome song, and it's so weird because it starts with like a pre-chorus and then goes into chorus. It's like you're hearing it right in the middle, like you feel like you missed the beginning of the song Dancing Queen. It just starts with so much momentum and never lets up. It's such a cool song. The only song in here that doesn't entirely do it for me is Dum Dum Diddle, but everything else is really good. I think Tiger is great. Arrival is a really cool piece. And then the fact that, you could, if you're getting cute with it, tack Fernando onto it. Happy Hawaii is not good. So, I'll pick the jelly beans I want out of the bag and say I'll take Fernando and not Happy Hawaii. And I thought it's really good. It's just the catchiest, the most sheen. It's got the good groovy bass in it without going full disco. It's got the ABBA vocal sound without being too monotonous and too stuck in a box like Ring Ring and Waterloo is. And it's just got the best songs on it for me. I think 5 of these songs are in my top 10 songs, maybe 4. But yeah, it's a good album. I can't believe it's at your very bottom, Jason. That blows my mind. But number 1, Arrival for me.
If we're talking stars, I'd probably give Arrival about a 0.5 star. And my favorite album of theirs is The Visitor. 2.5, maybe 3 stars if I'm generous, but I think it's miles ahead of anything else. More synth poppy, more new wavy. I think the melodies on this record are pretty much all really good. They don't grate on me or annoy me the way a lot of their other melodies do. The title track's a really cool opener. I think Soldiers might be the best chorus in their whole discography. 2 for the Price of One is a really bizarre song, but I like it a lot. Should I Laugh or Cry is a cool synth pop tune. Under Attack I like a lot. This record kind of reminds me a bit of like Missing Persons or something, minus some of the punkiness. I think it really works well for what they do. It's a good direction for them to go, and I think would have been cool to hear more like this. Easily my favorite.
Again, I have to point out that the actual album ends with Like an Angel Passing Through My Room. So Should I Laugh or Cry, The Day Before You Came, Under Attack, and Cassandra, which are usually sort of tacked on at the end, were not on the album. I don't know if it would have changed my rankings if Under Attack was, because I really like Under Attack a lot. It was their final single that they released after they kind of already broken up or on the cusp of breaking up. So I will say that. But getting to my number 1, it's Arrival, obviously. This album just insists upon itself. Starting off with When I Kiss the Teacher, which is just super bubblegum, just so ridiculous, so over the top, but it works so well. You know exactly what you're getting into. Dancing Queen, again, the undercurrent of the lyrics, it seems like it's a super peppy, upbeat song, but it's kind of like not. It's about aging and sort of not being the dancing queen anymore. It's watching the dancing queen do her thing, and you're sort of off by yourself. At least that's how I take it. I don't know exactly how Andersson and Ulvaeus meant it to be, but I definitely get that sort of not quite what it seems on the surface. I think the production's better than ABBA, the self-titled album. I think in general, it sounds a lot cleaner. I think the instruments are all very sort of perfectly in the mix. You can hear everything really well. I get that it's almost overproduced as far as all the sounds. The bass almost sounds fake sometimes because it's just so perfect. But I think it works, again, with this sort of super shiny, overproduced sheen that kind of envelops ABBA with all the, the singing is as perfect as it always is. I love My Life, one of my favorite tracks. It's sort of a different sound. very kind of slow and drawn out and sort of just layers in, kind of builds. I think Tiger's awesome, just kind of out of the blue with its aggressiveness. I love the scream, sort of the almost hoarse, harsh vocals. Totally kind of against, When I Kissed the Teacher and Dancing Queen, but I like the range of style, even if it's in kind of the same galaxy, it's still a lot of kind of different elements and different things going on. Arrival's sort of a cool instrumental closer. And other than Dum Dum Diddle, which is kind of throwaway, everything else is just awesome. Knowing Me, Knowing You is great. Another one of those adult pop songs. I think it's just a great, great album. Everything about ABBA that makes ABBA great, you can find on this album. If you're an sort of ABBA adjacent fan, check this one out first. If you like Dancing Queen, check this one out. If you don't like Dancing Queen, maybe just don't listen to ABBA at all, or check out The Visitors or Ring Ring, something completely as far away from Dancing Queen as possible. I don't know, this one works for me. I listen to it all the time. I think it's great. Makes up 30 to 40% of my top 10 songs list. So yeah, Arrival, number one for me. I think it's great. I think it's 5 out of 5 stars for me, baby.
And I think the reason why I like it is it sounds the most like that mid to late 70s, like not arena rock, but AOR album rock kind of vibe. It's got like Supertramp vibes on it kind of at times, outside of Dancing Queen. That's like the more disco song, but Knowing Me, Knowing You kind of feels like it could be power pop, like of its time and stuff like that. So I think that's why it strikes the chord the most for me.
It's very much like not following trends. Like it just sort of exists and they're just trying a bunch of different things, which I think all work really well, but it's not like they're trying to jump on a trend or something. It's sort of, this album exists in its own Euro pop universe and really doesn't sound like anything else I've ever heard.
Talking about records that one person has had at the bottom and another person's had at the top. Construction Time Again, I don't hate that record. I like Slanted and Enchanted a good bit, so we're not that far off, even though I had it last and you had it first. This might be the widest divide we've ever had, because I hated Arrival a lot and you love it. So there may never be another record that we talk about on this channel where two of us are further apart.
We'll find something. I fully believe that.
Well, even though I didn't have it at number one, my admiration for Cut the Crap by The Clash is far above where you guys consider it. So that's got to be a contender as well. Closing impressions of ABBA, guys?
Still love them. This was one of my favorite listographies to do. It was just as much ABBA as I wanted. There's not listening to like 50 years of Neil Young write the same friggin' album over and over again. It's just, give me the glory days of ABBA. 30 minutes an album. I'm good. I loved it.
I'm always glad to do a discography, even if I hate it, because at least now I know what it is and I can say that I've listened to it, but I will do my best to never hear ABBA again.
And I wouldn't say I am an ABBA fan, but I am a fan of Arrival, and I don't mind ABBA. That's where I'm at. It is probably one of the least favorite listographies we've done. I'm still glad to do it. I found a lot of songs I didn't know and that I like, but I would rather listen to 42 Neil Young albums than anything other than Arrival. So,
well, I mean, that's pretty much all we got to say about ABBA. Interested to see what everyone has to say about them, because they are sort of so different than what we've done so far. There's really, I mean, they're way kind of out of there. Even like something like Depeche Mode or Pavement is very much sort of adjacent to what we're doing and what our fans seem to like. This one's like just way out of left field, but people seem to dig them. So I want to see all those ABBA fans in the comments telling Jason how wrong he is and appreciating Ryan for giving it a shot. So leave your comments, like the video, subscribe to the video, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find all those links in our description below. And you can join us tomorrow for top 10 favorite ABBA songs as ABBA week continues here on Listography.